Okay, great. Thank you very much. Hello, everybody. My name is Tom Timbrooks. I am running for House of Representatives, United States House of Representatives in Washington, D.C. for Oregon's 6th Congressional District. Here I am. That's me, and that's my beer, and that's my cigar. I am one of the people. And the whole thing about my campaign, I'm running on providing jobs for Oregon. The whole thing is, see, I'm a Republican. Republicans believe in making the world a better place than when we got here, and jobs for Oregon. I love living in Oregon. I love it. It's a beautiful place. There's lots of great stuff to do here, lots of great things to see. I love photography. There's waterfalls, rivers, mountains, birds, and all kinds of great stuff. And I love living in Oregon, but I want to have a job. I want people to have gainful employment in Oregon, and Oregon is one of the worst places in America for a company to actually come and set up its shop, and it's all, you know, taxes and different problems. And I want Oregon to be a much better place for corporations to exist. Okay, and so what I'm going to do, if I get elected, I go to Washington, D.C., I'm going to do everything possible to bring federal tax dollars to Oregon so that Oregon can have more jobs. The more jobs we have, the less money we'll pay in taxes. The more corporations set up shop here, the less of a financial burden each one will have. That's the problem with the state right now, is the state is actually creating a financial burden for corporations to set up shop here, and that's a bad thing. But you know, my fellow Republicans are going to work inside the state to make it a better place, and I'm going to work in Washington, D.C. to try to bring money to Oregon so that we can set up shop. Now, the money I'm talking about is federal tax dollars that are set aside for national needs, things like cancer research, like that. I've talked about PLCs, programmable logic controllers. These are the things that run the infrastructure of America, and in McMinnville, where I live, this is McMinnville, we've got all of the industry that is required to actually build these PLCs. So what I want to do is get the government to make a decision about PLCs and have all of the PLCs that were made in China replaced with PLCs that are made in America, because we know that American-made PLCs are not going to have backdoor viruses on them, and the ones that were made in China, they could have backdoor viruses on them. The Chinese could take control of our infrastructure at any time. So building PLCs in America would be a great idea. And here in our 6th Congressional District, we have all of the industry that is required to build these PLCs. So this is what I would be bringing federal tax dollars to Oregon in order to get these. Now, for the rest, let's see, I want Oregon to be a better place to have jobs, okay? I want corporations to be able to set up here. And the way things happen naturally, organically, is that there is a legitimate need. There's a requirement. Somebody needs something. This is free market 101. Society has unlimited wants and needs. So these wants and needs are satisfied by corporations. The way it happens organically is a corporation sees a want or a need and then provides for that want or need. And the best way to set this situation up is organically. Like I said, no government influence at all. And this is what I want to talk about now, is government subsidies, actual government subsidies. Now, government subsidies for corporations are different than federal tax dollars that are coming into a state to be used to produce something, okay? If the federal government has a need, a legitimate need for the American people, then federal tax dollars are used to satisfy that need. Those are not subsidies. Subsidies, and I'll get on that right now. There's me. Subsidies are different. And I want to talk about why government subsidies to corporations are counterproductive. Okay? Now, what actually is a subsidy? A subsidy is where you have an established corporation and the government wants the corporation to do something that it wouldn't naturally do. Okay, like I said, a corporation's entire purpose is to increase shareholder value, and the way a corporation increases shareholder value is by supplying for the unlimited wants and needs of any society. Okay? A corporation, in order for a corporation to do that, the corporation has to hire on the most talented people that can be hired on at a cost-effective way. Okay, so if the corporation can make $1 million doing something, then the corporation can spend up to, like let's say $900,000 to do all that stuff, to bring people in, okay? Now, what will happen with a subsidy is the government will come along and see a corporation, Intel, for example, and will tell that corporation, look, you're doing a great job in supplying for the wants and needs of society, but we would like for you to hire more minorities and more females. We would like for you to get into the whole DEI thing. And the corporation's going to come back to the government and say, that's counterproductive. It's going to cost us money to do that. So the government's going to come along and say, we're going to give you money in order to do that. We're going to take taxpayer dollars and we're going to give the corporation money in order to get the corporation to act in a way that it wouldn't naturally act. Okay? So subsidies act completely differently than federal funds for projects. Okay? So what I'm going to talk about today is subsidies and how subsidies are counterproductive while federal funding for projects are not counterproductive. So there is going to be a big difference between the two, and this is why I want to talk about this, is because whenever we're talking about me going to Washington and bringing money back to Oregon, I'm not talking about subsidies. I'm not talking about subsidies that go to corporations that are established to get these corporations to act according to some kind of government standard for DEI or anything like that. We're talking about government funds that are provided to corporations so that those corporations can provide for a legitimate want or need of society. And programmable logic controllers are a legitimate need. They will be needed by society. We will need them. We'll need to replace them, the ones that are made in China, okay? But subsidies are something completely different. And like I said, subsidies create rent-seeking and not innovation. And what rent-seeking is that when a business makes money by manipulating the system to secure special advantages like government subsidies, favorable regulations, or exclusive contracts, okay? And we're talking about Joe Biden's CHIPS Act. Well, with the CHIPS Act, companies like Intel and TSMC can apply for billions in taxpayer funds under the banner of national competitiveness, but the real outcome may be more about padding balance sheets than creating lasting public benefit, okay? And this is something I'm talking about with national competitiveness, is that Intel, a terrific American company, TSMC, Taiwan Semiconductor, but they work with America, NVIDIA, other American companies, the government comes along and says, wow, you guys are doing really terrific. We want you to do this. We want you to make these decisions, okay? And so what the government is doing, the government is claiming that by hiring these people, it helps the company to be more competitive. But just the opposite happens. The company no longer cares about being competitive. The company only cares about collecting these government subsidies, because there's really more money in government subsidies than there is in innovating and making new and better products. So this is one of the bad things about subsidies, is that corporations prefer more subsidies to actually manufacturing something to satisfy the wants and needs of society, okay? So it's especially problematic because it rewards political connections and not market performance. Like I said, there's more money in collecting subsidies than there is in creating newer and better products. It distorts market incentives, and like I said before, if the incentive is on hiring people, then the incentive is no longer on making better goods and services. So there you go there. So it entrenches the inefficiencies, which means what a company will do, a company will say, well, gosh, you gave us $100 million last year for hiring these people, and yeah, that helped us out, but we're still inefficient. We could use more government subsidies. And so the government will pay more subsidies. So the inefficiencies that would have been fixed are going to stay entrenched. They're going to stick around, because as long as these inefficiencies, as long as a company can claim that they have these inefficiencies and these problems, the government will keep on shoveling money into the corporate coffers, so that the corporation can keep making these bad decisions. See, so that's what's meant there. So it crowds out genuine innovation, which, yeah, if the corporation can make more money from subsidies than from innovating, it's going to go with subsidies. Okay, and rent-seeking turns capitalism on its head. Instead of profit being the reward for serving customers better, profit becomes the reward for serving the political process better. And you see, that's what we want to avoid. We want to avoid serving the political process. That's socialism, and socialism's bad. Socialism puts the government in charge of everything, and if the government's in charge of everything, well, then there's no innovation. There's no reason for innovation. The government, anybody who's in government, their job is to make sure that you're working, that you have money, that you have a job, and you're going to want a better and better job. But anyway, socialism doesn't work. Okay, social programs and socialism a lot of times get conflated. Well, what happens is, see, social programs are paid for by the jobs that are created by the free market. Free market comes along, creates these wonderful jobs. People work at these jobs. They make money. And the money that they make is taxed. The government gets taxes from the jobs created by the free market, and those taxes go to pay for social programs. Socialism would actually destroy the free market, which would eliminate any money for social programs. So socialism is counterproductive to social programs that we like, and so we need the free market in order to pay for the social programs. So don't ever conflate, don't ever confuse socialism with social programs. Social programs and socialism cannot exist. They can't coexist, okay? So, anyways, and this is exactly what the CHIPS Act is doing, creating a well-funded race to please Washington rather than a race to produce the best and most cost-effective chips for the American people. So the CHIPS Act is actually preventing corporations from developing the competitive edge that the CHIPS Act is advertised to help create. It's counterproductive. It's working against the corporation. It's acting against the natural, organic way that corporations would act. Okay, so Mass layoffs despite subsidy windfalls, and who really profits? Okay, Intel laid off around 15,000 employees globally in August 2024, and as of mid-2025, the company announced plans to cut an additional 10,000 jobs, even after receiving roughly $2.2 billion in CHIPS Act funding. $2.2 billion of your tax dollars. That's your money. Your tax dollars. You paid $2.2 billion to a company that's going to go ahead and lay off 15,000 people anyway. So, I mean, was it worth it? That money could have been used someplace else, you know? So these layoffs come alongside sweeping structural efforts and cost-cutting measures, but shareholders and executives aren't sharing the pain. The new CEO, Lip Bhutan, is set to receive a hefty compensation package, along with a base salary of $1 million a year and annual cash bonuses of up to $2 million, long-term equity grants worth $14.4 million, $17 million of performance award, stock options valued at $9.6 million, and a new hire option grant of $25 million, a total of $68 million. $68 million. This guy is going to make $68 million of your tax dollars. Your tax dollars are going into his pocket. Okay, that's what subsidies do. Subsidies take your money and give it directly to the richest people in the world. And we don't want that. That's bad. That's the opposite of what I want to do. I want to go to Washington. I don't want subsidies. I don't want subsidy money. I want federal funds so that corporations can provide for the unlimited needs and wants of society and the wants and needs that we'll have. Another thing I want to do is provide for cancer research. We have a wonderful cancer research place here in Oregon. Federal funding would bring that cancer research place to a big level, and we could have people from all over the world coming to Oregon to have cancer treatment. That's a wonderful thing. It's not subsidies driven. It is federally funded. This is what your tax dollars are meant to do. Your tax dollars are meant to fund things like cancer research, creating PLCs domestically so that our infrastructure is not compromised by foreign bodies. That's what your tax dollars are supposed to pay for. They're not supposed to pay for some rich person's package to be a well-paid, overly paid CEO. Okay, that's not what your tax dollars are for. Okay, so what this tells us, subsidies are fueling executive enrichment even as the workforce is hollowed out. Workers bear the true cost, which is job loss, stagnant wages, and growing insecurity, while leadership profits. The narrative of innovation funded by public money starts to unravel under the reality of corporate redistribution, which means the corporation makes money and you lose money. Weak enforcement of the subsidies terms. Now, the government isn't going to just give this money to the corporations with no terms. There are some terms, but it's up to the government to make sure these terms are adhered to. And I mean, is the government doing that? I mean, have you checked? Has anybody you know checked on whether or not these subsidies are being utilized properly and we're getting a good return on our investment? Because I have checked, and no, we're not. This is a bad deal for us, okay? So, although the Act includes guidelines against stock buybacks and requires benefit sharing and labor provisions, enforcement has been lackluster. Firms like Intel have a long history of buybacks, $152 billion since 1990, and yet still benefited from the grant. Workforce development and equity goals under the Act have been described by Brookings Institution analysis as vague and fragmented. So what is a buyback? A buyback is like this, okay? In order to be on the board of directors, and I'm going to use Intel as an example again, because I just recently worked at Intel and I know a whole lot about Intel, but every corporation in America that gets federal subsidies is just like this, okay? In order to be on the board of directors at Intel, you have to have 10,000 shares of stock. Well, you're not just going to have 10,000, you're going to have like 1 million shares of stock. Okay, so let's say you have 1,010,000 shares of stock. Being on the board of directors and getting these subsidies from the government, you know that Intel stock is going to increase in price. Okay, so let's say Intel stock is you know it's going to increase in price from $50 a share to $55 a share. Okay. And you happen to have 10 million shares of stock plus the 10,000 you need to stay on the board of directors. What you can do is you can wait for the stock to go up to $55 a share, and you can sell 10 million shares of stock. And then when it comes back down to $50 a share, you can buy the stock back. You have just made 10 million shares of stock times $5 a share, $50 million. Your tax dollars just gave somebody on the board of directors at Intel $50 million. Okay, that is literally robbing from the poor and giving to the rich. And what does your money get you? All your money gets you is that some minorities and women were given preferential treatment in the hiring process, okay? That's it. That's all that happened. And is that what you really wanted? No, that's not. I need roads built, bridges built, dams, infrastructure, energy. I need safe food, safe drinking water, things like that. Things that my tax dollars are actually supposed to go, to pay for. That's what I want. I don't want some already wealthy person getting even richer off of my tax dollars, okay? So, strategic mismanagement and opportunity costs. The funds may have better served infrastructure, scientific research, workforce training, areas often underfunded despite being core public responsibilities. There are also persistent critiques that the CHIPS Act largely supports successful incumbents, not fostering true competition. Injected capital mostly enhances shareholder value and not public welfare. And what that means, like I just said, the shareholder value. The corporation's job is to increase shareholder value. Their shareholder value increases, your money disappears. Okay, that's what it does. Your money disappears, their shareholder value increases. Now they could buy another yacht. Is that what you want with your tax dollars? That's not what I want for my tax dollars, okay? Political favoritism and inconsistent strings attached. The Act's implementation has been peppered with political controversy. Lawsuits like export concerns, national security scrutiny over Intel CEO, and lobbying raise red flags about cronyism in the economic policy making. As one editorial asserts, his personalized transaction approach sets a dangerous precedent favoring CEOs who please the administration rather than adhering to predictable, fair policy. And one of those things, how did the Democratic National Convention get $1.6 billion for their little dance party with Beyonce? Well, the way they got that money was from donations from corporations that benefit from subsidies. They want to keep the subsidies going. These CEOs and boards, people on the boards of directors, they want to keep the subsidies flowing in. They don't care where the money comes. They don't care about the taxpayer. They just want the subsidies, keep the subsidies flowing in. And that's the problem. You have the richest people in America, the richest people in the world, and they are supporting the Democratic Party because the Democratic Party is going to give them subsidies, and the subsidies are just going to make them richer so they can keep supporting the Democratic Party. And that's a problem with our democracy. If the richest people in the world are in control of our democratic republic, I mean, haven't we really lost our democracy? You know, if their votes are more important than my votes because they're rich and they can bring Beyonce up for a dance party, we are losing our republic. We are losing our democracy. And we're paying for it ourselves through subsidies. It's crazy. The subsidies are completely counterproductive for corporations and for society. Okay, so yeah, all around bad thing. Subsidies led to rent-seeking behavior, not innovation. Jobs cut followed subsidies. Benefits didn't reach workers or public needs. Lax oversight means companies often sidestep intended subsidy conditions, and missed opportunities for public funds might have generated greater social returns elsewhere. Crony capitalism risks policies driven by favoritism instead of strategy. Now, I want to talk about Favreros, because this is something that you paid for. Okay, while I was at Intel, we had this technology called Favreros, and basically, let's say this is a microprocessor. Okay, it's a square. I know microprocessors are like this big; they're tiny things, but let's bigger size. Okay, this is a microprocessor, and in order to get more stuff on the microprocessor, it keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Well, somewhere along the line, somebody figured out, okay, for some reason, that this is as big as a microprocessor can get. So how can we improve the microprocessor without making it bigger? Well, what we're going to do is we're going to take one microprocessor and stack it on another. This is Favreros technology. This is something that Intel is championing. It's it's one of the stars of their manufacturing, okay? Favreros and the CHIPS Act, who really benefits? When you hear the word Favreros, it sounds futuristic, and it is. It's Intel's crown jewel, that's what I meant to say, their crown jewel, in advanced semiconductor packaging. But here's the real question. Did your tax dollars just help build a skyscraper for someone else's penthouse? Okay? What Favreros is in plain English. Favreros is Intel's 3D chip stacking technology. Like I said, one microprocessor on top of another. Instead of laying all the circuits flat like a parking lot, they stack them like floors in a high-rise. And this means faster performance, lower power use, and smaller devices. It's a real engineering leap, no question. It's one of Intel's key initiatives backed in part by the CHIPS Act funding, okay? But now, why the CHIPS Act got involved? The CHIPS Act was sold to the public as a way to bring semiconductor manufacturing back to the U.S., strengthen supply chains, and create jobs. Well, Intel pitched Favreros as the kind of innovation that would keep America ahead in technology. Taxpayer money went in billions in subsidies, loans, and grants, okay? Billions of dollars to help Favreros technology. Here's where the wheels come off. Intel has actually cut over 15,000 jobs in the last year, even after receiving CHIPS Act funding. The CEO's bonus, $11 million, money that came in the same era as those layoffs. Favreros technologies will be sold worldwide, with profits going to Intel's shareholders, not the taxpayers who helped to fund it. The patents are owned by Intel and not the American people. So basically, your tax dollars paid for Intel to develop this technology and produce this technology and send this technology out. We aren't getting paid back. We are not going to receive any of that money. Now, like when General Motors needed some help, General Motors got a federally secured loan from the United States government, and General Motors paid that loan back. Subsidies do not get paid back. This is just money that you give to the richest people in the world so that they can produce something, and you don't get any money for their production. Okay, that's just crazy. It's stupid. Why are we supporting somebody else's opulent lifestyle, their lavish lifestyle? Okay. So corporations like Intel have one legal responsibility, and that's increasing shareholder value. If a subsidy doesn't do that, they won't take it. If it does do that, it's going to benefit the owners and executives first every time. Your tax dollars become a corporate profit booster while roads, bridges, housing, and fuel infrastructure go unfunded. Okay, so Favreau's is brilliant engineering, but here's the truth. It's a publicly funded skyscraper where only the top floor is occupied, and it's a private penthouse. Until subsidies come within airtight guarantees for public return, we're just bankrolling the view for someone else. And here's how that works, okay? Here's how that works. Let's say a corporation has 1 billion shares of stock, and the board of directors is saying, we won't make this decision, we won't act the way you want us to act until you can raise our stock by $5 a share. Okay, so the government comes in, you've got 1 billion shares of stock, we're going to give you $5 billion, it'll bring your stock up $5 a share, so you'll do what we ask, okay? And that's, provide jobs for people, do the DEI thing, equal opportunity employment and stuff like that. And so like I said before, they sell their stock when it's up to $55 a share, and then they buy it back whenever it's down to $50 a share. So that's what happens. It's all about increasing shareholder value. It's not about actually making the technology. See, Intel would have made Favreau's technology, would have made these advanced microprocessors anyway. They didn't need the government's assistance. They didn't need government subsidies. They would have made the technology anyway, and they would have made it in America. I know they would have made it in America because Intel does not take their intellectual property and put it anywhere else in the world. Like, they're not going to build it in China because they know that the Chinese government will take the technology and copy it. That's what China does. They take somebody else's technology and they copy it, and they call it the people's microprocessor. Okay, so Favreau's would have been created anyway, and it would have been created in America, and the shareholder value would have gone up, and lots of good stuff would have happened. Intel didn't need the subsidies. The money that the government gave to Intel was just to make rich people richer, and probably more than likely it was to get these wealthy people, the wealthy elite, to support the Democratic National Convention. That's how they got the money, the $1.6 billion. Okay, that's with these super PACs and everything. This money going into a super PAC, and the super PACs don't have to tell anybody where the money's coming from or anything like that. So the super PACs are paying for the Democratic National Convention and all the entertainers that go up there and entertain people. So that's your tax money that is going to pay for the dance party with Beyonce and the Taylor Swift concert and stuff like that. So yeah, it's not a good deal. Okay, and that's corporate welfare at scale. Okay, so basically, federal corporate welfare is the umbrella term for all forms of government financial support to private companies, not just subsidies. This includes direct cash aid, which is outright payments to corporations for research, relocation, or expansion, loans and loan guarantees, which is government assumes the risk. That's you. You assume the risk, allowing companies to borrow more cheaply than the market would allow. Tax breaks and credits, special deductions or credits that reduce a corporation's tax bill, sometimes to zero. See, these are the things that you pay for that really don't do you any good, but they do the corporation a lot of good. The Cato Institute estimates that these programs together cost the U.S. taxpayers around $181 billion every year. That's nearly 3 times what we spend on the national highway system. And I like the highways. I want the bridges and roadways to be in good shape. I don't really care about these fat cats that want to take our money from us. And what's more, these programs are highly concentrated. A relatively small number of large corporations capture the majority of the benefits. Many of these companies are already profitable and have no genuine need for taxpayer support, like I said with Intel. In agriculture alone, the top 10% of farm businesses receive about 60% of all subsidies, even though they are often multi-million-dollar operations with valuable land assets. So they don't need the money. They're just being given the money so that they can give the money back to the Democrats and support the Democrats, which, I mean, it's undermining our democratic system. It's undermining the republic. Our democratic republic, our constitutional republic, is being undermined by these tax subsidies, and you're paying for it. The American citizen, the American taxpayer, is paying for it. And that's kind of disgusting. It creates two economies, one where ordinary citizens and small businesses have to compete and survive on their own, and another where politically connected corporations receive government backstop, effectively privatizing profits while socializing risk. And what that means, privatizing profits. They make the money, you take the risk, and you don't get any money back. You are not getting any of your subsidy money back. I mean, yeah, these companies will create jobs, temporary jobs that are okay, but it doesn't do you any good to have a temporary quick fix job if you're going to be unemployed in the next round of layoffs, right? So your tax dollars would be better spent with scientific research or some other kind of research, infrastructure, fuel, something like that. Your tax dollars are spent in better places than being given to really wealthy people. So in practice, corporate welfare distorts markets, crowds out small innovators, and redirects public funds away from essential services like infrastructure, housing, food security, and energy resilience. Now, with the subsidy illusion, this is how taxpayer money becomes executive paychecks. The CHIPS Act, and I keep on picking on the CHIPS Act, but there are more things than the CHIPS Act. The CHIPS Act was supposed to be about American jobs, innovation, and staying ahead in technology. But in reality, it's turning into something very different. A taxpayer-funded transfer of wealth to some of the richest people in the world, and the rest of us are left holding the bill. We pay, they profit. That's what subsidies are all about. We, the taxpayer, give them money, they profit, we get nothing for our efforts. Okay, in fact, we're in a worse condition because that's why the national debt is going up so high. It's at $37 trillion now. It's just ridiculous. It's because we get all the money we collect in taxes, we give that money to the world's richest people, and then we borrow money, put it on the national debt so that we can provide for infrastructure. And that's just insane. All of the money we collect in taxes should go to America's infrastructure. It shouldn't go to the richest people in the world so that they can have another gold-plated toilet seat to throw out of a window at somebody. You know, it's just crazy. Why we do that? It's just stupid. Okay, so. The CHIPS Act funneled billions into projects promising that taxpayer money would bring semiconductor manufacturing back to the U.S. soil and create thousands of good jobs. Well, here's the catch. The technology and the profits it generates belong entirely to Intel and its shareholders. Now, we helped fund the team, but they get to go out with the cheerleaders. And you remember, okay, when you were in high school, you'd go out and you'd cheer on the team. You'd be like, yay, our team is the best team. Our football players are the best football players. Yay, our team. And you would buy stuff and you'd pay for tickets and uniforms and pay for donations and like that. And you would think you're part of the team. You're not part of the team. You're just some paste-eating nerd, who sits in the stands and watches the game, and the people who are actually on the field playing the game, they're the ones who get to go home with the cheerleaders, not you. Yeah, nothing actually happens for you. I mean, you could go around saying, our team beat your team, but I mean, what do you really get out of that? You don't actually get anything. You get to know that your football players are dating your cheerleaders. That's it. Okay? And it's the same way with these tax incentives, these financial incentives. They're just, you get to say, yay, America is the top leader in the world in these microprocessors, but I mean, you're not getting a job out of it. You're not getting anything good out of it at all. In fact, you're being robbed. Okay, you're paying for somebody else's success. You're paying for these billionaires to be able to buy another apartment in Manhattan on a really beautiful skyscraper. That's what these subsidies do. Okay, and so I keep saying that. It's, I'm going to keep saying it through the whole presentation here. Subsidies fuel rent seeking, not innovation. I know I said that before, but people nod off, so I want to get it again. The CHIPS Act is a recipe for rent seeking, and that's when companies make money by gaming the political system to secure special advantages. Rent seeking does 4 dangerous things. It rewards political connections instead of true innovation. It distorts the market by making lobbying more profitable than product development. It protects inefficiencies. Companies know the government will cushion the blow. And it shuts out small competitors who can't match the political clout of industry giants. And in the CHIPS Act, the winners aren't necessarily the best engineers. They're just the people who are the best at working Washington. Okay, so we lose, they win. And it's all about marketing. It's not about reality. It's about perception. The mass layoffs despite subsidy windfalls. This isn't just theory. The numbers tell the story. Intel cut 15,000 jobs globally in 2024, and as of June 2025, announced another 10,000 layoffs, even after securing $2.2 billion in CHIPS funding. The new CEO, Lip Bautan, is set to earn $68 million in potential compensation, including a $1 million salary, millions of dollars in bonuses, and tens of millions in stock options, while median employee pay at Intel has barely moved in 5 years. The optics are crystal clear. Taxpayer dollars flow in, workers are shown the door, and executive suite gets a pay raise. Okay, so that's not what I voted for. That's not what I would ever vote for. I would never want that to happen. And the reason I'm telling you guys this is because, well, I'm hoping that somebody listens. I'm hoping somebody realizes, okay, we're paying a whole bunch of money in subsidies to corporations and we're not getting anything for our effort. So elect Republicans. Elect me, elect Republicans. Republicans hate subsidies. Republicans love fiscal responsibility, okay? Democrats have, instead of fiscal responsibility, which is basically cheap. How could we get this cheaper? Democrats like strategic investment, which is a perfectly good thing. I mean, that's how we got to the moon. That's how we paid for the Panama Canal, the Golden Gate Bridge, the Brooklyn Bridge, all those things. Wonderful little projects and everything. And that's how we're going to pay for cancer research. That's how we're going to pay for the PLCs that I want to have built within the United States. All of those things, strategic investment, everything, okay? But we have to understand there are some investments that we shouldn't make, okay? And these subsidies are those kind of investments. Democrats shovel these investments out because they know that the corporations that get these subsidies are going to support the Democratic National Convention, so Democrats are going to be able to stay in power. Republicans aren't going to do this. Republicans are going to make rules preventing this from happening. So if you don't want your money going straight to all the richest people in the world, elect Republicans. Okay, Republicans are the people who are going to prevent this from happening. So corporate welfare at scale, once again, this isn't just Intel. Federal corporate welfare, direct cash aid, loans, and tax breaks cost U.S. taxpayers about $181 billion every single year, and that's more than the entire Department of Education budget. A huge share of these funds goes to already profitable corporations. The top 10% of farm businesses get about 60% of all agricultural subsidies. Large fossil fuel companies take in billions in tax breaks and preferential policies annually. Major corporate players across multiple sectors tap into government-backed loans and incentives that smaller competitors can't touch. It's two economies, one where ordinary citizens sink or swim on their own, and one where big corporations get a government life raft before they even get wet. Okay, so that's what I'm fighting against. Now, with the bigger picture, when subsidies are handed to billion-dollar companies with little accountability, we're not investing in the public good. We're financing private gain. $1 billion, if a company gets $1 billion for 1,000 jobs, well, that means that each job that pays $50,000 a year costs the taxpayer $1 million, which means the corporation is taking $950,000 for every $50,000 a year job that it creates. Okay, instead of new bridges, affordable housing, or energy security, that money becomes executive bonuses, shareholder dividends, and boardroom luxuries. Okay, so This is what, okay, I know I'm harping on it and everything, but I got to get the message across. Okay, these subsidies are counterproductive. They actually prevent businesses from investing in new technology. If investing in DEI policies and other government policies, if that makes more money for the company than actually building better better goods and services to stay competitive on the market, well, then the corporation's going to do that. And other companies, smaller companies that can actually produce, remember, Intel was once a very small company. So was Apple Computers. Apple Computers was a very small company. All companies, Hewlett Packard started out in somebody's garage. They made signal generators. Well, Hewlett Packard is a giant company now, and they didn't become a garage company and turn into a big company with government subsidies. Okay, they did that through innovation, through creating new products, new things, and actually paying attention to what the market wanted. The free market had unlimited needs and wants, and Hewlett Packard, IBM, Intel, Apple Computers, all the General Motors, all these companies saw unlimited wants and needs, and they supplied for these wants and needs. They didn't have government subsidies. They didn't need them. But they all started out as small companies. Well, there are many, many small companies out there right now that could become, eventually, they could become very, very big companies, but what's holding them back is the subsidies that are paid to very large companies. These very big companies are getting your tax dollars, and your tax dollars are preventing these very good, very efficient small companies from becoming big companies. Right now, there is actually a cell phone manufacturer in the United States. Okay, and I forget the name, but they're down in California. Their cell phones are very expensive, but they're made with American-made products, and they're very good cell phones. Okay, so they are actually being held back from becoming a major player in the cell phone market because the government is providing subsidies to other corporations. Okay, this small company wants to be a big company, and maybe in a couple of years they could become a big company, but we have to stop subsidizing the big companies so that small companies that are very effective and very good, and they have a marketable product that is in demand, these smaller companies can become bigger companies. That's the free market. That's what America is all about, is the free market. Okay, and this is where we can't have socialism, because socialism will prevent these small companies from becoming big companies by nationalizing them and putting them under the yoke of the government. The government will force them to do stuff. It'll destroy their progress and their innovation, and it'll destroy America. So anyways, so these subsidies are holding back these small American companies that could potentially become big American companies. If Hewlett-Packard had to deal with the same situation back when they started as they do now, they may have never become a giant company that employs tens of thousands of people nationwide. Okay, so that's what we're talking about there. Okay. So until subsidies come with ironclad conditions, enforceable job creation targets, clawbacks for layoffs, and public ownership of resulting intellectual property, they will continue to be a wealth transfer from taxpayers to the already wealthy. Corporate subsidies are quite literally robbing from the poor to give to the rich. Now, I do have a proposed 28th Amendment to the Constitution that will fix the situation, okay? And that's one of the things that's on my list of things to fix here, okay? So with my 28th Amendment, my proposed 28th Amendment, and I'm going to talk to this is why I need to get to Washington, D.C., so that I can talk to the right people about getting this done. We have, in 1936, the Supreme Court said it's perfectly all right for the government to provide funding to non-government organizations so that they can provide for the general welfare, promote the general welfare. It's in the preamble to the Constitution. We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare. Okay, it's the fifth bullet point, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America. Okay, so promote the general welfare. That's what they started doing. They started providing financial incentives, not just subsidies, but financial incentives to corporations so that these corporations could be prosperous in America. The Supreme Court said it was okay. Well, what the Supreme Court didn't do, they didn't establish any time limits, they didn't establish any transparency, they didn't establish any requirements that these financial incentives provide any kind of return on investment to the American people. See, the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution says, in part of the Fifth Amendment, towards the end, it says a lot of things, that, like, you have the right to remain silent and so forth. But one of the things that the Fifth Amendment says is that the government cannot take anything away from you without just compensation, okay? And this is tax dollars also. The government cannot take your tax dollars away from you without compensating you financially, giving you just compensation, okay? And so, in order for the government to take your tax dollars and give financial incentives to non-government organizations, the government has to show where you are benefiting from this, okay? Well, with these subsidies, the government doesn't have to show that you're benefiting from this, okay? So my 28th Amendment, what it will do is it will look at every financial incentive that is created by Congress, every one of them, all of them, the ones that started in 1936 and are still going, and anything new that people want, and the incentives that are putting us $37 trillion in debt, in the national debt, it's just crazy. Okay? All of the financial incentives will be evaluated by an independent branch that is appointed and controlled by the executive branch. Okay, so the executive branch is in charge of enforcing the law. The executive branch will appoint a group, kind of like DOJ, nonpartisan, not Democrat, not Republican. They will be independent politically. Nobody's going to elect them. They have to exist. They have to be there according to my 28th Amendment. And their function will be to examine every financial incentive, including subsidies, to see if it's following the Fifth Amendment, to see if Americans get just compensation for whatever money they're putting in taxes. That's what the 28th Amendment, I'm going to propose this 28th Amendment when I get to Washington, if I get to Washington, and we will rein in this insanity. We will stop the growth of the national debt. I mean, how much bigger can it get? Seriously. It's just, that's just ridiculous, okay? So anyways, the 28th Amendment that I'm going to propose will attempt to fix this system that's kind of broken here, okay? So if subsidies are supposed to be seeds for public prosperity, then we have to stop planting them in corporate boardrooms. Otherwise, the only thing growing will be executive paychecks, and the public will keep paying the tab. Okay? So that's what I have to say about subsidies. Subsidies bad. Get rid of subsidies. Federal funding for the wants and needs of society, that is not subsidies. It's a completely different thing. The federal funding requires oversight. It requires transparency. Subsidies are just money that the government gives to their rich friends. Okay? Now, I have a list of things here that I want to accomplish once I get to Washington, to remove $5 trillion from the national debt, once you have the proposed 28th Amendment, the Digital Security Act, which is going to be building all of the PLCs in America, TB screening for people coming into the country, as well as working in critical parts of the food chain, educational system, also polio. We should check people, if we're going to allow people to come into America, we should check them for these diseases. The 5-pillar blueprint to empower local governments, and that's where every local government in America they'll have to submit cost estimates for any kind of projects they want to do, and the projects will have to be part of the 5 pillars, and that will be infrastructure, jobs, housing, food, and fuel. The reasonable operational space, that's point number 6, and that's where whenever we have cops, you have the cops that are out there on patrol, and the protesters come right up to their face and blah, 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 blah. Constitutionally, that protester has the right to protest, has the freedom of speech, but that cop also has the right to safety and security, and to a certain reasonable amount of space. And that's what this act is going to be. Just, I understand you have the right to protest, but I also have the right not to have your face next to mine, okay? And that's what that is there. The Measles Vaccination Act, I want to make sure that people across America understand the importance of measles. That's the most important disease to get vaccinated against. The American Talent First Act, and that's where we're going to hire Americans before providing financial incentives to corporations to hire people from overseas. We should look for American talent first, okay? Immunotherapy for cancer, and that's the research facility I want to build here in Oregon for cancer treatment using the human immunotherapy. Okay, also promote in-person voting by showing legitimate security concerns, and that's something, in-person voting is one of the most important things that we can do to ensure that our voting is, one person, one vote, that our votes are not controlled by people, by rich people, okay? Now, something here I've got, MAGA is Make America Great Again. Okay, and you've got t-shirts and hats and everything with the MAGA and all that stuff. And I think that's kind of cool and everything, but people have got a negative response. They feel kind of negatively towards MAGA Republicans. They say, what kind of Republican are you? Are you a MAGA Republican? Do you support the MAGA agenda? And yeah, I do support some of the MAGA agenda, but you see, being a representative, being a state representative to America, the United States Congress, your agenda is to, like I said, bring federal funds to your state, to your congressional district. And I'm running for Oregon 6th Congressional District. I want to be a representative for Oregon 6th Congressional District. And so I want to make Oregon 6th Congressional District America's greatest congressional district. So what I've got here is our saying will be, instead of MAGA, Make America Great Again, ours will be Make Oregon's 6th Congressional District America's greatest congressional district. And that will be Mosdagka. It doesn't really roll off the tongue like MAGA does, but it gets the point across, okay? Make Oregon's 6th Congressional District America's greatest congressional district. And this is really what every representative should be doing. When your state, when the people of your state vote for you to go represent them in the United States Congress, your objective should be make your congressional district America's greatest congressional district. Do everything you can to support the 5 pillars: infrastructure, jobs, housing, food, fuel. Those are the things. You want money back to your district to pay for those things. That's what you want. You want your district to be the best district in America. I want Oregon's 6th Congressional District to be America's greatest congressional district, okay? And that's what MOSDAG just stands for, is Make Oregon's 6th Congressional District America's greatest congressional district, okay? So that's what I want to do, and that's the end of my little presentation here. Again, I am Thomas W. Timbrooks, and I am running for the United States House of Representatives for the Republican Party, representing Oregon's 6th Congressional District, and I am running on the policy that I will create thousands of jobs, perhaps tens of thousands of jobs for Oregon. Okay, thank you very much for your time, and please remember to vote for me.